Today's episode of the Nerdy News Rundown is sponsored by beautiful Halo. Since it was announced Friday that Spider-Man is indeed coming back to the MCU, we've gotten a whole bunch of more information about what happened behind the scenes and what brought both parties back to the table. On top of that, Kevin Feige's comments about Spider-Man swinging from one cinematic universe to another has sparked a whole nother conversation. Does this mean they're going to figure out an end for Spider-Man so that he can leave the MCU permanently and hop into Sony's universe, or will he go back and forth between the two? Buckle up, nerds. We got a lot to talk about today.
It's like the news, but for nerds.
Today's shout out goes to Lou Chandler. Indeed, Tar Vizsla was the first Mandalorian Jedi ever in the Order. Make sure you stay to the end of this video where we will ask another nerd card question. What's up, everybody? Happy Monday to you. I am Josh. Welcome back to the show. And man, oh man, ever since Friday's announcement, the whole internet's been reeling. Spider-Man is back in the MCU, but what does this mean exactly and how did it happen? So let's get into some of the new spicy details about what actually went down in this deal and why the companies decided to do this, and then we will speculate about what everybody's talking about. What does Feige mean by Spider-Man crossing from one cinematic universe to another? Okay, so there's a lot of chatter on this, and I'm gonna be completely real with you guys. Like, it's kind of hard to decipher exactly what was going on, and much like I was telling you guys as this deal was falling apart and maybe being rebuilt, this is just stuff that should be happening behind closed doors, and whatever we are hearing, even from reputable trades, is really secondhand information. So it's really hard to decipher exactly what is going on. But having said that, let's talk about what some of these trades are saying. Number one, Deadline is reporting that Disney is the one that actually came back to the table after D23. Believe it or not, Sony was totally good. Sony has a plan and they are just going to go do their plan. But it was Disney after D23 and after they looked out at what fans were saying online and how the buzz was going that decided to come back to the table. Now, I and many other people out there that like kind of do this, that make content when it comes to Marvel, speculated that Feige was going to become personally involved with these negotiations, particularly after San Diego Comic-Con and D23. Because if you look at the way they were sort of boilerplate answering everything around those times, like Feige was playing it very cool, but all the signs pointed to Spider-Man being incredibly important for the future of the MCU, at least in the short term. And so it just seemed like this was something that Feige was going to take it on himself to actually go negotiate for, because what was going on before was Alan Horn was negotiating with people at Sony. Now, Deadline is also reporting that the 50% take that Marvel or Disney wanted was actually real. And I know there's a lot of confusion here. There's a lot of people saying different things. Most notably, Jeremy Conrad is coming out and saying that Disney never wanted half, that was all fake news. And I like Jeremy and I like MCU Cosmic. I think they do a great job with a lot of their scoops, but homie ain't God and what he says ain't the gospel. And there's a lot of conflicting information out there that is reporting that Disney did indeed want 50% of the revenue from their future arrangement with Sony, and they were going to back it up with 50% of putting the money forward. So this one's tricky to figure out, but in my opinion, it does look like Disney was trying to go from 5% total take all the way up to 50%, and that they did sort of retreat back to 25%, which seemed to be something Sony was okay with. And it's just funny because in a lot of ways, people are painting the picture that like the mouse won, that Disney won, that this is a big win for them. And it's just funny how the perception of that will probably be there no matter what. But according to a lot of the trades out there, that's not exactly the case. It was actually Marvel and not Sony that came back to the table. It was Marvel that made concessions, not Sony. So the actual winner here is probably more Sony than anyone, but it won't look like that out there online, and that's totally fine. Like, I got no dog in this fight. Like, I don't care either way. If anything, I'm such a Marvel fanboy that I'm like, whoop whoop, let's just get the win for Feige. But the reality is not that. So I really felt it was important to make mention of that. Okay, now let's talk Spidey-Verse, and that's a word that probably comes from Feige that Sony will now use to sort of market their version of the Marvel universe. Remember way back when they were developing the Venom movie, there was all this talk about the Sony Marvel universe, this thing that they were going to build, and Sony Marvel universe is just too clanky and not cool, so I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say it was probably Feige that was like, just call it the Spidey-Verse, what are you guys doing? And so yes, in his statement on Friday, Kevin Feige said that Spider-Man was a unique character. He was one of the only characters that had the superpower to cross between cinematic universes. And Deadpool was over there like, am I a joke to you? But I digress. Like, what Feige is referring to there is this Spidey-Verse that Sony is building. And they haven't been shy about this at all. Remember, guys, I told you way back when in that Amy Pascal interview that famously had like the sad face Kevin Feige where he was very uncomfortable about her sharing this information, she literally let it be known that that's what Sony was doing. They're building up a universe for the Tom Holland Spider-Man. When that arrangement was over, Spider-Man's coming back to Sony, and that's where he will remain. Now, to compound and sort of add to this story with the spice is the fact that just the day before that, on Thursday, before the Friday announcement came out, it was broke in the trades that the writer that did the Morbius movie is working on a Madam Web movie. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, dude, they'd never do a Madam Web movie. Like, who would do a Madam Web movie? Perhaps in light of the announcement on Friday, this makes a little bit more sense. Madam Web is sort of this cosmic level character, something akin to like the Grand Master in Thor Ragnarok, or even more like the Watchers or something like that. Like, basically, Madam Web is this cosmic being that is able to communicate and do different things with Peter Parker. And so whether via Madam Web, the idea of the multiverse, something that was going on with the branched timelines and realities from Endgame, all of these things are diegetic ways for it to make sense that Spider-Man is literally existing in two different universes, that he will come over here in some universes, and then he'll come over here in some universes. Now, it was reported, and I believe it was comicbook.com that did this, they reported that what is going on here is that Kevin Feige is actually going to develop a clean way for Spider-Man to exit the Marvel Cinematic Universe and go to the Sony Spidey-Verse. And my gut tells me that's not exactly true, but it's not exactly false either. Like, what I think is going on here is due to this arrangement, Marvel has let Sony understand that like their connection to the MCU and their connection to Disney is a huge, valuable piece of the puzzle for them. And it would be best if instead of having this terrible breakup that really doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, when you consider the end of Far From Home, like, how do you go from that to just whatever Sony wants to do, including the Venom movie? It doesn't make sense. We're missing a chapter. We're missing one of the books in that volume for that series, right? So I think Feige will actually help Sony and help Marvel develop a way to keep it distinct, right? Whenever Spider-Man's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we will know that, and it'll be distinct, and he comes from that universe. And then when he's playing over there in the Venom-verse or the Spidey-Verse, that will be distinct as well. And like I said, there's multiple ways they could accomplish this, and I think that what was really important to Feige was truly wrapping up his story with Peter in the MCU with possibilities of it continuing later on, but also figuring out a very clean way to differentiate between the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Tom Holland, or rather, and Tom Holland in the Spidey-Verse. Now, what's really mind-blowing about this whole situation to me is that the Tom Holland Spider-Man character himself will always be that character. And so the character development from him in the MCU, and then the character development for whatever happens when he's in Sony's Spider-Verse, that will all be a part of the character. So if he eventually comes back for like a Secret Wars, which is a highly rumored big Marvel project that they are working on, he could come back from Sony's Marvel-verse or Spidey-Verse into the MCU, and that whole through line with all that character development is still intact. That is brilliant. I think things that we can essentially be guaranteed of is that Tom Holland will be in the Venom sequel, and I think he'll even show up perhaps in the Morbius movie. Like, Sony pretty much has all the cards in this situation, and I'm damn sure that whatever negotiation they came to, still, I mean, the license hasn't shifted hands. Like, it's still Sony's character. I mean, they own the license to create that character and do whatever they want with them in the cinematic sense. So I'm pretty damn sure that Tom Holland is going to be playing a big role in these future Sony movies, which I'm really excited about. But the big story and what people are very excited about with regards to Marvel is that the third Spider-Man movie, the last chapter in this trilogy for the new Spider-Man, will be handled in the MCU. That is going to be MCU stuff. And so, look, I know people out there are saying like, hey, look, don't get too pumped because it's a one and done and then we get the clean crossover. Either way, that's still way better if that's like your worst case scenario. But on the other side of this is a very interesting opportunity for Sony and Marvel to build a character that continues to jump back and forth. Why not bring him back for a big Avengers or a big event film? And why not send him back over to the Sonyverse when he's playing with all those Sony characters. But I would say my gut tells me, and from everything I'm reading into this online, that no, Morbius and Venom will not come and fight with the Avengers. That doesn't seem to be something Marvel would be interested in, but it would perhaps be possible for some characters from the MCU to jump over there, but I highly doubt that as well. I think it's going to be pretty succinct, pretty clean, and frankly separated. And so that's the news, the latest, and some clarifications on what is going on with this Sony Marvel deal, what happened with the negotiations and why it actually did work out, and what we might be expecting of future films from both the MCU and Sony. So I'm sure you got some thoughts. Let us know all your thoughts or questions that you might have in the comment section below. And now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, from what movie did Tom Holland pull a clip from to post on his personal Instagram on Friday after the news came out? It was hilarious, really well timed, such a perfect clip, but I want to know, from what movie did Tom Holland pull a clip from to post his reaction to the deal coming together on Friday? Answer that question in the comment section below. Beautiful Halo is a company that sells a bunch of awesome merch, particularly cool stuff with pop culture stuff like comic books and Star Wars. So if Spider-Man going back to the MCU or Kevin Feige maybe making a Star Wars film has you pumped and you want to get some sweet new merch and support the channel at the same time, click the link in the description below. You get dope, nerdy merch, and it helps out the channel. It's a win-win. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.